Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast of Mythical and his comrades. Today, we are joined by Connor, again, but a new face to the crowd. Please introduce yourself.
Well, it's just a podcast. It'd be surprising if you had a new face.
Well,
it's only just been me and him the first two times.
Well, I mean, like, again, for all
your,
you know...
Your face will be rendered in post on the image that
or
is...
a different face of your choosing.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be your face, but if you want it to be your face...
Have you seen the one I put for it? It's really something.
I like that we still haven't said my name. My name is Anakin Skywalker, and it's nice to have you on. Hi, I'm William. I have opinions, and that's about all my qualifications.
All right. That's all we need to hear. Let's get into this. So, Phantom Menace. It's a menace. Phantom. Oh, God.
Good, man.
Yeah, I know. Comedy 100. So, this movie is... A lot of things have been said, and we've all been gnawing at each other to know what we think after rewatching it. So, when you were a wee, small child in the meager preteen era of your life, what were your thoughts on this work of art that George Lucas graced the screens with?
Connor, would you like to go first?
Sure, yeah. Like, I watched all of the movies out of order because I was a kid and I didn't know better, and It took me a while to figure out that I could just put the CDs in the player and play them. So I'm pretty sure I watched 2 and 3 before 1, and 1 was like one of the last movies I watched, and I don't really know how much impression I can really say it had on me, to tell you the truth. I'm like actually pretty sure my first exposure to episode 1 was playing like the Lego games. I'm actually pretty sure like playing back when it was just like the episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the Lego game. I'm pretty sure that was my actual exposure to it. But I did eventually watch the movie because we did actually have it on DVD. Of course, not CD. I said that earlier, but it's not. It just never even really left that much of an impression on me. Like, Maul was a cool character. It was cool to see, like, Anakin, but, like, there was never... It took other watchings to really see some of the... And there are, like, significant parts in the movie. None of that really landed on me as a kid at all.
Yeah. Even
compared to other movies, like, you could kind of see... like stuff with like Luke in the original trilogy and the significance of some of the points in that like him almost falling and then like being triumphant as a Jedi. It like episode 1, almost all of the nuance was lost on me. It was just a movie.
It was stuff.
It was stuff.
Stuffed crust.
My first experience with Star Wars that I can remember, like clearly it being a thing that exists. I was in a motel with my family, and on the TV there was a version of episode 2, specifically the final fight of episode 2.
Well, with Dooku and...
Like, with the big Jedi battle.
Oh, that part.
The Geonosis fight.
Last arc, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, this is what Star Wars is. And then, not to be, like, repeating, but I think this is legitimately, like, 90% of Star Wars people currently. I played the Lego game on Wii specifically. And
the Wii.
I loved it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then, like, for the longest time, I was like, oh, my God, like, there's more after, like, this whole, like, little chunk. And, like, oh, why is the technology different? I don't care. I'm 2. Like, and then, I don't know. It's that experience of just like, and then I found out about it, and then I found out what the internet thought about it, and then I was a sponge at the time where I was like, I'll just accept what the internet says, and I was like, I'll watch it, and I'm like, I didn't like this for the reasons the internet said. It just happens to be my reasons also. But what's amazing is, and it might be playing my hand here, a lot of times when I have, like, an opinion like that, it fluctuates. I will often then go on to see, like, the good of it, and I'll be like, you know what, I kind of was wrong about that. And I found that with a few films. The Phantom Menace is one of the worst movies I've ever seen multiple times of. That I genuinely do not enjoy watching.
Okay. Hold further thoughts, because now we're jumping into now. But
Yeah.
cool build up. I'm gonna be unoriginal. I was 5. I was this small, pathetic child. And
Beat 'em up.
my father, being the gracious man that he was, purchased for me at a store a PlayStation 2. And this
Oh, I know where this is going.
this archived console was a relic of a past long gone. With nightmare-inducing startup to just the uncanny nature of the console. It was something to remember. A staple. And one of the pinnacle points of this console in my timeline of existence is Lego Star Wars.
Yeah.
1 to 3. The original, not the
Yeah.
original trilogy one, but the same one.
Yeah.
And I just remember like all the characters standing on lava on the cover and
Yeah.
thinking it was simultaneously the dumbest and most badass thing ever.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the Phantom Menace was my favorite section of levels to play as a kid.
Wow.
And my favorite character to play as was Jar Jar because he had the high jump.
He didn't have a weapon.
No, he didn't.
Dude, he sucked.
He was
he
the
wasn't-
worst level.
When that level came around, my brother and I. So here's the thing: my brother and I would fight to play as Obi-Wan. So whoever got stuck playing Qui-Gon wasn't the cool one. It was really weird. Like, you know, nowadays I'd be like, yeah, Qui-Gon all the way. But like, back then you were uncool if you were playing Qui-Gon. You got stuck playing Player 1. In my household, Player 2 was cooler than Player 1.
That's interesting.
Because Player 2 was always the side character, and we always liked the side characters better than like the actual characters.
Well, your family were a bunch of nerds.
We were different, but we
Sorry.
enjoyed the Phantom Menace section. I don't know why, just something about the negotiations level, the Darth Maul fight. I remember the names of the levels.
What about the pod racing one?
the
'Cause
pod
that
race
one was hard.
absolute ass. That level's terrible.
My dad had to beat that one for me.
Yeah, it's bad. I really liked though the 5th level. I don't remember what it was called.
Revenge
like when they
of
go
the
back to Revenge of the 5th. Oh my god, Return of the 6th. To one episode.
Dude, nice one up
Oh
top.
yeah, I'm so original. Ooh. The 5th one. Anyway, that's getting off topic. The point is, I liked the Phantom Menace as a kid. I don't really know why. I think it's just because nostalgia. Because it was like, oh, the music reels me in every time.
Music
it's like,
is good.
The music's all right. It's good for like score standards, but by John Williams standards, I think he has better scores to his names.
I'd agree with that.
But at least compared to the other Star Wars films. But it was fine as a kid. So then we came to the moment where Connor and I rewatched it, and you rewatched it and already gave us a little teaser of your impressions now. So I think it's appropriate we just hop into this. Where to begin?
Can I start with an odd comparison?
Sure.
This movie is Wheat Thins. It is a snack that I don't... So, like, Wheat Thins exist, and that's about what everyone can agree on. You either have had Wheat Thins and you're like, I love them, or you haven't had Wheat Thins and you hate them for some reason. I hate Wheat Thins. I
feel offended. I have a box of them back in my room.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the thing. It's taste for some people, and quite frankly, I just don't get what people like Wheat Thins.
Okay, let me give you.
They're not horrible, but like, it's just a chip.
The Phantom Menace.
Okay. You can at least put cheese on a Wheat Thin though, and there's redeeming it.
You can not watch the Phantom Menace, and
It's
that
true.
redeems him in my eyes.
Yeah, that's my Wheat Thins. Oh my god.
I was walking into like school today, and I was like, Wheat Thins. And that was like, I needed to jam that in here somehow.
I like how you planned that. It's like you knew I had to compare it to something. So Wheat Thins. Oh my god. You know what? I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome for me being on this podcast.
What about Triscuits?
Okay, but at least garlic Triscuits exist,
Okay,
and those
yeah.
are good.
No, Triscuits in general, like there's more of a texture, and still, if you put cheese on it, it's good.
kill you.
Okay.
Okay, so like if we're gonna run with this analogy, let's run with the analogy.
Okay.
So putting cheese on a wheat thin or a Triscuit is the equivalent of adding your own context to a film to retroactively make it better than it actually is. And I feel like the moment you're doing that is the thing by itself naturally good if it's meant to only be good with other things in context. I don't know, just food for thought.
Oh wait, I fucked up. I did mean Triscuits.
Oh,
What?
Come on,
No.
William. You had one job.
Oh my god. That actually makes me mad because Triscuits are good. Oh my god. Wheat thins, I can see that, but like.
No, actually, if I'm recalling, I think I completely swapped those two things in my head because I think I like wheat thins.
How could you forget if you liked wheat thins or not?
Because they're terrible names, but Triscuit, what the hell's a Triscuit? But yeah, Triscuits suck.
Because it's
The
like.
Phantom Menace is Triscuits.
Oh my god.
It's dry, it's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere when you bite into it.
Mythical, I'm gonna need you to edit in the fact that I said Triscuits.
No can do, buckaroo. That's staying in there.
Dug your grave now.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
With the
I
consequences.
lost a sponsorship with both Triscuits and Wheat Thins, I guess.
They crossed two off the list.
We can get NordVPN. It'll be okay.
We can get Raid Shadow Legends.
Raid Shadow Legends. Anyway, so
After that
so,
little tangent,
transition 100.
So now if you add cheese to Triscuits, that's like adding new context to a film.
Absolutely.
Brand new sentence. I said,
There
not
you go.
Mythical.
Bringing it full circle. That's exactly what we like to
I love
see.
full circle.
So yeah, the Phantom Menace. The first time. Oh, whoa, that did not come out right. The time that I just watched it, that didn't come out right either. The last time.
Disaster.
The last time I watched it, being 2 days ago, geographically speaking, in time, was the worst viewing of it I think I've had. Just because I was looking at it with a lens of just purely critical, like, not that I was going to hate on it, but because I wanted to study it. I wanted to dissect it. See, my thing, I'm being a film student. The way that I see films is like how a medical student sees a cadaver. It is an opportunity to learn, but it is also a chance for you to pick apart somebody else's film, or in the case of the medical analogy, a person's body, to discover the inner workings, how it all comes together and meshes to form either a coherent story or a steaming pile of trash. And with the Phantom Menace, I discovered that there are parts of it that are actually kind of decent, and they're just like little like jimmies on top of an ice cream cone of dong. That's kind of the way that I see it. The foundation is really flabby and poor and flaccid in its nature, but you have accents of something good that are there, and they just don't really stick out enough to make it fully good, if you know what I mean.
This movie, here's the thing. I'm not a TV film person, but I've watched enough movies. I like movies enough. I like to think that I can, attempt to be like somewhat like intellectual with them or whatever. I can't with this movie. It's just, if I can compare this to another thing, it's kind of like the Bible. It feels like a thing that's existed for forever. So how do you review it? You either like it or you don't. It's just,
interesting.
Because here's the thing with me. Maybe it's also just like a lot of the online discourse that has gotten to me over the years, where it has gone from the most toxic thing in the world is to hate on this movie to like the nth degree, to the most toxic thing in the world being like the people that love this movie, quote unquote. And I don't know. This movie is so much of a sticking point within like just the online Star Wars community that it's just, I don't know. There's like the positive people that really love this movie and they're like, I think are great people, and then there's the people that post on prequel memes on Reddit.
Oh no.
And they're the worst people. And
Their memes are sometimes funny, but their takes are not.
no, it's just, I don't know. Like, I watch this movie and I just think, by God, this is fundamentally bad. Like, it just feels, and like I don't even know if that's a fully like true thing. I don't even know if fundamentally bad is like a fair thing to say about any film, but like.
I think it can be. I think that there's examples of fundamentally bad films we'll touch on as we go along and bring in other films as examples, but yeah, no, I agree with you to some extent that, like, the one thing, though, I've never seen anybody online unapologetically say that this was their favorite Star Wars movie.
Oh, I have.
I have not. I have seen in a book. It was the Origami Yoda series of books.
Oh my god!
I remember there was a character who said Attack of the Clones was their favorite Star Wars movie, and they got all this shit from the other characters in the book. And then that was the only time I remember someone saying Attack of the Clones was their favorite.
I have a friend whose favorite is Attack the Clones.
Really?
And like he will vehemently defend it.
I'm curious why, but that we'll talk about when we get to Attack of the Clones. But
yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I also definitely really liked that as a kid.
Attack of the Clones?
Yeah.
I actually hated Attack of the Clones as a kid.
Interesting.
I liked the Phantom Menace, but I didn't like Attack of the Clones because it wasn't as cool to me how like spread out the action was from the exposition, and the ending kind of just didn't.
Is that what you thought as a child?
Implicitly, not it didn't like come to mind like, yeah, the climax is not as good because it feels rushed. Like, I didn't make that connection, but some part of my brain was like, BS detector going off, this doesn't seem right. I don't know.
I just really like the clones in episode 2.
That's fair.
Small
You know what,
Connor
that's fair.
thought.
But you see, I liked Revenge of the Sith better because in the Lego game, the Phase 2 armor was cooler than the Phase 1 armor.
It was, though.
And because the Phase 1 armor was only just the pure white, the Phase 2, it was like you had the Commander Cody skin, you had the Shock Troopers, you had, depending on the version of the game, you either had the Swamp variant of the clone or you had the 501st variant. And if you were cool, you would actually know the 501st variant was in the game because it was in the PS2 version. So
PS2 was fun.
Yeah, but anyway, that was veering way off topic.
Yeah, we keep going on tangents. This is going to happen
That's
now.
part of the fun. With the Phantom Menace, though, yeah, I wrote what I put in quotation marks a thesis, which maybe will help bring to light what my problems are. I'll narrate it to you in a film analyst voice to kind of emphasize the passion that goes into this analysis. The film is plausible on a conceptual level, but fails tremendously in execution due to its inconsistent pacing, confusing string of contrivances and coincidences, and overall dull mood that renders the events mundane. A problem not at all helped by the lackluster performance given by its main cast.
You could just say Triscuits. That would have gotten all of that.
It wasn't very
Basically,
good as the TLDR.
that is describing Triscuits as food, I guess, from your point of view, because I know Connor is
I would disagree on the
Triscuit
Triscuit
enjoyer.
matter.
You're a big Phantom Menace fan, you.
No, it's just so inconsistent.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing for
Yeah.
me. And just in like a lot of the scene transitions and the characters and the Gungans. I feel like the Gungans are there, that whenever like the plot of the movie is like trying to go forward, then they throw the Gungans in and it messes everything up.
Or the Gungans are like, we need to keep this movie going and we gotta keep the kids entertained while we are screwing around, not sure where we're going. So
The Gungans are just a bad plot device, basically.
So, like, yeah, my problem is the pacing, like you said. The fact that, as we'll discuss, so much of this happens based on luck or just things happening. Like, example A, the Jedi learn that Qui-Gon attacked Maul on Tatooine. Like, the Sith return, and they're like, oh, so that means that Maul will be on Naboo, right? And it's like, wait, what? How did you make that conclusion? That doesn't even make any sense. Like, that kind of stuff is throughout the film. And just that nobody is giving their all. Everybody, except for Jar Jar, of all people, Ahmed Best was, like, the only one that was giving, like, even though the Jar Jar's character is garbage to the highest order, like, he was actually giving a performance. Whether or not it was good, you know.
Yeah.
But he was acting. Like, he had a screen presence.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. That means you could never ignore him when he was there, but he had a presence. I can't say that for anybody else, honestly.
Yeah, I liked how you pointed that out, like while we were watching the movie, that like genuinely in the first arc, Jar Jar was the best actor, and that is a problem.
That is a problem.
It's a big problem.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what my biggest problem is, and you just alluded to it, is that the movie ends 6 times. I think I wrote it down. There is...
Enlighten me.
There's when they escape Naboo, there's when they win the pod race, when they leave Tatooine, when they quote-unquote kill Maul, like 5 endings. It's like, and then when the movie actually ends. It is such a tiring film to watch for me, because all of these arcs are it's a 2.5 hour long movie, and it feels like it. Like it's when you have like a movie at this length, it really is just like, it's got to be some like the pacing's got to be like at a good pace, or it's got to be giving me interesting things constantly, and the movie doesn't. It's I'm getting to the point where I need to like breathe, because breathe. Mostly because I'm fat.
Let the air flow through you.
But it's just it's a tiring movie, because I things just keep coming, but I don't think a lot of things flow super well into each other.
Not at all.
I think we start off Trade Federation, and then they go, all right, so we're going to go, and then suddenly we're on like a normal planet, and then we go into the ocean, and then we go to like the nicer part of it, and then we escape from that, and then we go to a desert planet, and then we go to a city, and then we go back to the Naboo.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like things are tight. It felt like multiple episodes. It honestly feels like this was 2 movies, and I think that's the most tiring part, is episodes 2 and 3. I know we all love 3 because it's 3 and it's the one where the coolest things happen. But let's be honest, it's got like a lot of the same fundamental problems.
It has a lot of problems.
But
we'll
like,
get there.
Those movies feel coherent in the fact that
beginning, middle, end.
It feels like stuff, but like this has beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, I see that. It's not something I really noticed before. I think a lot of the problem with that is Anakin is like, he comes into the picture out of nowhere, where we've been building up these other characters, and the film almost frames him as like a main character.
Mm-hmm.
And then that distracts from the characters we've already been building up, so it makes it feel episodic in one film, which is a bit problematic. Like the film, I've never been able to answer who the main character of this film is, because honest to God, I don't think there is one.
There's just a bunch of different plot arcs sewn together, and it almost forms a cohesive movie.
But half of them aren't arcs. That's the part that's a problem. Qui-Gon doesn't have any development. He stays stagnant throughout the whole film. That's not a problem. What's a problem is Obi-Wan is also stagnant. Jar Jar is also stagnant for the most part. Padme is completely stagnant. All of her advisors are stagnant. Anakin kind of like a little bit something happens, but like that's the most development that happens. If there was more of a dynamic arc for some of the characters, I think a lot of those problems with the pacing and the jumping around would fix, because it would be like, oh, we're going to a new planet, this is a new chance for someone to develop in a different, interesting way. You know?
Rewatching, it's weird. The part that I actually am most entertained by, and maybe it's the fact that I'm 22, the politics part that was like so derided back in the day is the only part that like keeps me active, because it's the most interesting thing that happens.
Yeah, we pointed that out too.
This is fair. A weirdly deeply, like, I mean, Star Wars has always been like politically active, but this one is like in the roots.
Yes.
Like,
it has to be, because it's building a foundation for the OT.
When they get to Coruscant, it actually like, it kind of picks up, because they're like, and like, because back in the day, the whole argument was like, they get so much into like exact politics and going on and on and on. It's like, yeah, but like the most there's a great video by this guy Quint Reviews. I don't know if you ever like, heard or watched.
I've heard of him in the infamous sense, but
I am a fan. But he has a video where he said the thumbnail is what I remember the title as being. It's the prequels are good parentheses thematically, and the whole idea is when you put them together and put it all down on paper, the political aspect of it works really well.
Yes, absolutely.
and like if you watch this from almost like Palpatine's perspective, those movies work really well, and the whole vote of no confidence thing, I'm able to follow it now, and like the way that like scene progresses.
That was a nice scene. Looking back,
I like it.
People give it shit because they say it's politics, so it's automatically boring because we're not fighting droids or people aren't flying ships or anything. Like, that is my core problem with a lot of Star Wars fans, is the reductiveness of the material. Like, there always has to be action. Like, the fact that every episode of their new shows that you watch, with the exception of Andor,
gotta watch Andor.
There is a mandate by Disney, I believe. There's a mandate
Andor.
that you have to have 2 action scenes per episode, regardless of what show it is. Marvel, Star Wars, there has to be 2.
Marvel Wars.
At this point, their problems are becoming very similar, but
but like the politics is like, that's like the bigger picture. Like that's it adds a lot of context as to why they're fighting.
And then when like the politics end, I'm like, no. Like, but that was interesting.
Like, that vote of no confidence where you have like Palpatine Sheev, like he's literally like the devil on her shoulder telling her what to do.
Like, I have my problems with the scene. I do think that it has a couple issues, but it is probably one of the first times in the movie after so much dead space I was like, okay, something is happening.
It picks up. Also, I think that scene would be a lot better if the actress wasn't monotone the entire time.
Yeah.
And I going back to something that whoa. I feel like I just did a Thanos snap.
It's caused an earthquake.
The Mark Hamill said where it was like he was talking about how people reacted to the prequel trilogy, and he basically said like, yeah, no, I know how he directs. Or like even the main. So I'm not exactly blaming her, and maybe that's what he wanted, but it's just she's so monotone. Like her expression never changes, and it's just a weird decision for that. But yeah, that scene like really worked for me in like an odd way, but like I don't know. You also have to admit that it is a bit of a weird decision, especially when the text crawl literally opens with, like, tax law.
I don't have a problem with that. I really don't.
I do.
I don't, because here's the thing. This is, like, the starting point. It's supposed to be. It doesn't do a good job of it, but it's supposed to be the foundation for the war. Usually wars don't begin in wartime. Obviously, there's peacetime there's something broiling that leads to the pot overflowing.
What if we start with... What if we start... Go ahead.
Talk about that, because there's 10 years between this and episode 2.
Yeah. Did there need to be, other than justifying why Anakin and Padme get together?
But why can't we also be like, something is stirring, or like something like you said, like the text scroll literally opens with like taxation of trade routes. It's boring. It sounds and that, again, main issue.
I don't have a problem if it sounds boring. The fact is it's not developed by the film. And the worst part, Connor and I brought this up after watching it, virtually nothing that happens in this film is relevant to Attack of the Clones' premise. It's like Dooku literally gets pulled out of thin air to create the instigator for the Confederacy of Independent Systems, which is not at all related to what the Trade Federation went through here. They're there, they're involved, but literally the extent of it is Newt Gunray has beef with Padme because of it happening, and that's not developed. And because of that, Attack of the Clones feels like you could honestly start there. Like, you wouldn't need to watch the Phantom Menace.
A lot of people do. You know the flashback way of watching.
Yeah.
A lot of people do that, and they just skip episode 1.
Isn't it like 4, 5, 2, 3, 6 or something?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then obviously, 7, 8, 9. We have to acknowledge those films exist.
At least those have interesting crawls most of the time.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
At least they're...
I'll debate that, but we'll get back to that.
The dead speak.
It kind of sounds
Say
cool.
what you want.
I have the same problem with the First Order reigns and Luke Skywalker has vanished.
Okay, but like...
We'll come back to that. That's another movie, but...
Here's... I'm going to touch on the Disney Star Wars for just like a moment. Spoilers for other episodes if you want to just not respect me now.
Go away if you don't want to hear.
I like the Disney Star Wars movies. Obviously, there is one that we won't name, but I don't really enjoy. Episode the last one. I think it's better than some people say, but that's for a later date. But I think what keeps those entertaining in my mind is just like there's a story that happens. There are main characters that we follow and have arcs, and then as you said, like in this movie, that's just not a thing that happens. I said there in my notes I wrote like there is a version of this movie where Obi-Wan is the protagonist.
Yeah.
And we follow him as opposed to him being a snarky asshole the entire time. Where we've picked up another useless, dumb as crap life form.
Because that isn't developed at all. That's just something they say to give him like a surface of character, to give you the illusion that they're actually doing more work than they are.
Yeah, it's mostly just quips from him.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if we actually had some character development.
Every character has quips like that. It's Connor and I addressed this in our Andor podcast. Like, there's so much nuance to lines in Andor, and when you go back to movies like this, and it's like, oh yeah, Master, don't betray the Council, not again. And it's like, again. What do you mean again? Like, what is that supposed to be development? Like, what are you just referencing something we haven't seen doesn't count as development?
The prequels do that a lot too.
Yeah, that's one of their big problems. I'd argue.
Again, like relying on outside context to justify parts of the movie.
It never is a good idea. You never like let a book or a comic tell you what you're supposed to do in a movie like that when you're paving the way for the original trilogy.
We never get to what I consider the lowest point in Star Wars in terms of subtlety in writing. We never get to Solo, but like we definitely get a lot of moments that are wink wink, hey audience, where I think the two that stick out of my mind, it's able to be justified in the writing, but Anakin Skywalker meet Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like that was you did you need to say their full names?
Yeah, he looks at the lightsaber too.
What?
That's like all real smooth.
Okay, well no, I like that he sees the lightsaber and doesn't say anything. What I don't like is in the next scene they address it and he's like, "Is that a laser sword?" And then they have this whole like minute conversation and then shift to talking about something else without any subtlety whatsoever, any transitionary stuff. It's like,
I think the transition is Jar Jar actually. He probably
I think
he does something stupid.
he reaches his tongue out and Qui-Gon grabs it and it's like he's like,
Gotta keep the plot moving.
While we're on that, maybe we should touch upon the key to all of this. And like he is not he is not the worst thing in the movie, in my opinion, because
I don't think so.
he is the worst single thing in this movie. The rest of it feels like a big, like, sweeping problem.
Yeah.
But if I had to, like, condense it all into one thing, it's the fact that Jar Jar Binks does not need to be in the movie. And yeah, is it, like, the most basic NPC thing to say? Like, Jar Jar, not actually that good. Like, yeah,
it's a derivative claim, but it's not unfounded. That's why people say it.
It's repeated because it's true.
Right.
Like you said, you got some of your opinions on like early Star Wars from like online. From my mom, instilled in me the idea at a very young age that Jar Jar was stupid.
Yeah.
That he was bad.
My dad said that about Jar Jar and young Anakin especially. Young Anakin, So Jake Lloyd, I mean, obviously his life is a total travesty.
Have you seen a picture of him now?
Yeah, no, I've seen like the police reports.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's in an insane asylum now, but
and I hope he's doing well.
I really do too.
Hopefully, yeah.
It's so sad.
Clearly something went wrong.
I assume you've seen the behind the scenes documentary, right?
Some of it.
I've seen snippets.
That is actually a must-watch in every Star Wars marathon I do. I don't watch the other two prequel making-ofs, because those are just kind of like Hollywood, like, making of a movie. Yeah. But this movie has one of the weirder behind-the-scenes documentaries I've ever seen, because it's not treated in a very, like, whoa, check out this thing. It's weirdly silent. Like, there's not, like, a bunch of, like... and it's not really glamorous. Huh. It's very, very, like... You know, like, they do show, like, important moments that's, like, oh, really cool. The first time Ewan McGregor picks up his lightsaber.
Oh, yes,
like,
I've seen that.
They give him those moments, but, like, at the same time, like, there's a lot of, like, silent, like, just the scene is playing out as it will. very iconic shot to me is when they're showing the infamous storm that happened during the production of this film. Like, you remember, you know that, like, there was, like, a giant rainstorm that screwed over a lot of their filming days and, like, trashed a bunch of their set.
I actually did not hear about that.
Yeah,
that's terrible.
But just to get back on track, watching the sections with Jake Lloyd is honestly a little tough because he's so happy.
He doesn't have tonal control. He's a kid, understandably.
Yeah.
No,
that's not to justify it, but that is why it's a problem.
When I mean in the making of.
Oh.
That's what makes it hard to watch because he is excited. They ask him, did you tell everybody that the reason you're missing school is because you're gonna go make Star Wars? And oh my god, it was, especially when you read, like, the Wikipedia literally says it was the kids at school. Like, a lot of them made fun of him for it because of how people reacted to it, and those parts are hard to watch.
I can imagine.
And again, in my notes, I literally write, Jake Lloyd is not that bad. He's not great. I'm not gonna pretend, but he's like a kid.
Yeah, like
there are worse child actors than him. For what he's trying to do, he's trying to be the last time Anakin is ever, like, somewhat happy because he's around his mother. I can understand that. And there's actually, I think he has one line that is actually unapologetically well delivered. Mm-hmm. And it is,
I'll try spinning, that's a neat trick.
Has anyone ever seen a pod race? Of all things. It's such a random line, but I remember he says it at the dinner scene. And just out of nowhere, I noticed it, and I was like, wait a minute, that had, like, inflection, it had nuance. it was, like...
something new for this movie.
But it was said in a way, it was like he was trying to act as a kid, but, like, not trying. He was being a kid. He just said, has anyone ever seen a pod race? Like, it was that hint of curiosity, but, like, the implication that he wanted to, like, bring that up as a topic. That is nuance, and that was actually, I thought, really well done, but a lot of it's followed up with, like, just monotone delivery that you'd expect from a child actor, so Rip Bozo there. There's not much you can really say, but damn, did he and Ahmed Best take shit for this movie. Yeah. It's such a shame, because, I mean, they're just people playing roles. That's a problem throughout all of Star Wars. I will always say the characters are bad, the actors are not. They don't deserve what they get.
Carter, would you have something to say? You want to say?
Yeah, it's just sad. Like, there wasn't much more I had to say than that.
Very sad.
Like, like, a lot of the characters get so much hate, and it's not always their fault. Sometimes it really is their directing. Like, there's a lot of directing problems, and it's not because the actors are bad in this movie. It's just the way that they went about directing them.
Mm-hmm. This is another thing. I think my main thing about that I will say throughout the rest of this podcast is everybody should watch the making of episode 1, because there's a lot of, beyond like a lot of really cool insights, there's a lot of like, you shouldn't have made that decision moments.
Yeah.
And of course there's the infamous Jar Jar is the key to all of this. But the one that hits me is beyond like the casting of Jake Lloyd, which again ultimately serves as, it's tragic, weirdly.
Absolutely.
There is they showed how they actually did Jar Jar, and so Ahmed Best had basically 2 versions of one performance, where what they did was one of them he is completely like green screen, and like they take his movements 1-to-1, like it's a motion capture, and they take him, like his arm swings or whatever, and they just place him, and they do that. And then there's one where they use his mocap as a base, and then they did like VFX over the top of it, and I believe that's what they go with in the end. So Ahmed Best, he still did it, he still actually was like the performer, but they did a lot of more cartoonish things over him, and I think Jar Jar's loss of charm comes from the fact that he really does feel like he doesn't feel that he's there. Beyond the CGI, he moves differently, he acts differently, his body seems to act in like just different rules than, he's a cartoon character.
Right. And out of place with physics, like you said, and as somebody who also does animation, like I'm not great at it, but I know when things don't look right, and he is surrounded by.
It's very hard to
weird
get
movement.
something perfect like that.
Oh, especially in 1999. I mean,
it's better than most things in 1999.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the animation's quite good for that age.
With that said,
it's still bad.
It's there's nothing grounding the performance to make Jar Jar really feel like he's there. Again, better than most, where he does feel like he has weight, but the CGI doesn't really help him have presence because he's in the background. Like, if you notice, he's always behind something or behind like the two people when they meet in Naboo. If you notice, there's never a point where like it really looks like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are next to him. They look like they're in front of him. But beyond
Unless
that,
it's a close-up or something.
The reason I say that is I really think that what might have helped that is if they had used the more grounded Ahmed Best performance. Because then, while it would have felt like somebody in a costume, that really wouldn't have been that much of a step out of the comfort zone for Star Wars. Again, just having the original trilogy, I don't know. Like, it's one of those decisions where, like, that's why I recommend everybody go watch the movie, because you will watch not only insight into, like, an iconic movie, you'll also watch, like, a lot of decisions being made that shouldn't have been made.
I always like the clip of when George is in the theater watching it, like, the final cut of it, and he's like, I may have gone too far.
Yes, that's another iconic moment.
It's been memed to hell, but that's the point where you wonder if the director is very conscious of the fact that his movie wasn't up to par. That's a problem. That means that there are problems. And the fact is, George Lucas, I appreciate his ideas. He is a storyteller. He is not a director.
Yeah, like, he's an intelligent person, but the prequels are what you get when he is in full control. Like, the original movies at least had other people helping to direct.
Yeah.
There was, like...
Writers also.
Yeah,
Irving
writers.
Kershner and Richard McQuarrie, I think, are the names of the directors of Empire and Return of the
Yeah,
Jedi. And
like,
they both...
Empire.
Irving Kershner just... Bam! That's a really well-directed movie. And George had the story decisions, but on the poster, he's only credited for story. He's not a writer. He's not a director. He's not even a producer.
He's a great world builder.
He is. Oh, he's amazing at it. And the one thing about the Phantom Menace I do like is it feels like there is a world happening off screen when we're not seeing the world. The mentions of the Senate constantly, just like the allusion to the fact Palpatine is on another planet where the Senate is, and the fact that we're getting there. It takes forever to get there, but when we do get there, it's like, wow, this world is so much more vast than we ever would have thought. And then the audience is wondering, where's Coruscant in the original trilogy? Which I do like that they added that in the special edition. I do like that change.
Like, we so freeze. One line that I always wait for whenever I watch episode 6.
Yeah, but I mean, I do like the shot of the statue tumbling on Coruscant, and you can see the Senate in the background and everything. It's such a neat,
which shouldn't be there because they don't exist at that point.
Well, the building would still be there. They just don't.
Yeah.
There's nobody in the Senate though.
Yeah. It's probably just like a landmark where it would make sense to be a museum, maybe even.
There might even still be offices. I mean, a lot of the logistics probably still happen.
Probably. That would make sense, but. I did want to give the movie a bit of credit, and I don't know how much you've heard about this, William. I know Connor is fairly well versed in it.
Made a lot of money.
It did. People are very hyped for it. Like
I was referring to something more subtle about but the concept of what the Duel of the Fates means for everything. Are you familiar with Dave Filoni's rant in The Mandalorian behind the scenes about the story of what Duel of the Fates means for Return of the Jedi and everything?
I am not.
Okay, let me educate you.
This is a very interesting thing.
I'm gonna open my York peppermint.
Hashtag not sponsored. Here, wait, I have one too. Let's open it at the same time.
Alright, for all you ASMRists, get ready to feel like being on top of a frozen mountaintop. Are you ready? Mythical, edit this out. Absolutely not.
So here's how it goes. So the Duel of the Fates is a piece of music that is very well composed by George Lucas. Obviously, you know,
what are you doing
you, sir, are living under a rock.
What's Star Wars?
So, I don't need to explain Duel of the Fates as a piece of music. I'm not a music person, but in the film, it's kind of just like the score for their battle, and it's like, okay, whatever. Then you get to Attack of the Clones, and the scene where Anakin's on the speeder to go save his mother, you hear it play, and it's like, why is it playing there? This isn't a battle scene.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear it play again in Revenge of the Sith when Yoda and Palpy are fighting, and it's like, okay. Well, basically, Duel of the Fates is sort of this orchestration of the tragedy of the fact that Anakin's fate is sealed the moment where Qui-Gon is killed by Maul, basically, in that battle.
They're actually dueling for the fate of Anakin. It's the actual crucial turning point in the movie.
So you know how as soon as Qui-Gon dies, Palpatine is like immediately all over Anakin. That came out very wrong, but he's like constantly giving Anakin support. He's basically filling in the role of Qui-Gon, because in the Phantom Menace, while it wasn't very well developed, I think it's slightly apparent that Qui-Gon is sort of like the father figure for Anakin. He didn't have being raised by a mother only because he was born of immaculate conception. Which we can come back to that later, because I'm sure there's a lot to say on that. The fact of the matter is, with Qui-Gon gone, Anakin is missing that important connection that he needs to conquer his fear, to overcome and master control of his emotions, and by extension to basically actually attain the potential that he's promised to have as the Chosen One. But when that father figure is taken from him in the Duel of the Fates, Palpatine, basically the doors are wide open for him at that point. That is the moment where Anakin is screwed. Not the moment where he is basically determined to be Darth Vader because of anything he's done, but his fate is out of his hands now, and he's basically a pawn. And Obi-Wan choosing to succeed the master role for Anakin by Qui-Gon's request is really important, because it shows Obi-Wan actually doesn't care about teaching Anakin, which I do kind of think is a little bit of an odd choice, but it makes sense when you think of it in the fact that he wasn't doing it because he saw that potential in Anakin necessarily. He was doing it because he was asked to, and in doing so, it's interesting because they get that brother dynamic. They even say you were my brother, Anakin, or whatever, and it's a little tacky and on the nose, but the point stands that Obi-Wan was never a father figure for Anakin. He was a brother to him, and Palpatine was trying to fill that role. So then, to tie it all together, because I've been rambling on for so goddamn long, in the original trilogy, Luke finds out Anakin is his father, or whatever. So in the final confrontation scene, it's spoilers because, if you're still here, you know where Star Wars is and what it is. Vader coming out to fight Palpatine, and Anakin returning as the Return of the Jedi is the moment where Anakin becomes the father figure for Luke that Luke needed in that moment, but also the figure that Anakin never had, basically. So that's what it all kind of 1 in 6 bookended right there through that moment cinematically. So then they burn Vader, or Anakin at that point, his body, the same way Qui-Gon is burned in this movie. Yeah,
it's quite purposeful.
So that
rhymes.
Yeah,
it does
rhyme.
And I think that's what George Lucas was going for. Here's my issue with it. That is a beautiful story. It is a beautiful concept, and that's exactly what it is. It is a concept. This movie doesn't develop it enough to make it as good as it could be. I think the other prequels do a better job. The original trilogy is fine, but this movie just doesn't get it. It doesn't build up to it enough. It's implied.
Yeah, it really took a making of a show made 20 years later after the movie to actually understand the most important part of the movie.
Yeah.
It's I think it goes back to what I said before, that video I reference all the time. It's I think it's really true. It's the prequels are great thematically, the theming on point, some of the best. Watching them, no.
Maybe not even just the themes, just the very concept of the story itself, the outline, the treatment of it. Whatever George Lucas took notes on and drafted out was probably really good, but when he actually went, the fact that Vader's fall was because of love, the hypocrisy of the order he was involved in, the tragedy of his mother, and the fact that he was basically always a slave, all those details mixing together. Brilliant. A great way to establish Vader, but the problem is the movies struggle because they fail on the basic front. I heard someone say George Lucas, he's like a master of all the hardest things, but he botches the basics. He can't get the dialogue right.
It's just not executed right.
I think we may want to like bring this back to just specifically the Phantom Menace, because I think we're moving into a bit of we're talking about all of the prequels at this point.
Somewhat, yes, yeah.
So if we could bring it back, I might have something to bring it back to just like the specifics of this movie, if you'd like. With
what do you got?
I have 2 hot takes.
Okay.
One of them may be a hot take. One of them is definitely a hot take.
All right, what is it?
Actually, I have 3 technically. If you wanted me to get really hot and
okay,
spicy.
let's start mild.
Okay, mild. The droids suck. The droids are unabashedly a problem I have with this movie.
Why?
Because they are so beyond physically not being there. They are so wimpy, and I get why canonically they're wimpy, but all of the action scenes, especially in the beginning, when you have an actual actor swinging, because what's great about lightsabers is they are physically there, but they're also digital and whatnot, so that's a great blending. Especially in that beginning part, it looks like they just swing their lightsabers and then they put in where the droids are.
Yeah.
So and I think that effect fails. It feels very green screened, where it's, oh, the thing behind me fell, and like we'll just make it look, we'll time it perfectly, and it doesn't. The action for them,
everything feels intentional and not like real. I guess.
It almost feels like they were like, just go swing them, just swing your. Oh, at this point, there's a guy behind you, and then they edit on top of that.
I'm getting the sense a lot of your problems with the movie aren't just the writing; it's just the actual like physical construction of the movie visually.
Yeah, beyond because that's why I said like I find it hard to like engage intellectually when like, as you said, like the basics feel very off.
They do. Oh, absolutely. I don't think the movie is well written. I think that there is potential, but I don't usually look at the visual stuff as much. But that is cool detail I never really picked up on, was how staged a lot of it feels.
Yeah, it feels. I would phrase it as it feels very after the fact. The droids feel after the fact, and like I know they were there the whole time they had the design, but like just the idea that like Qui-Gon swings, and then there was predetermined they'd hit it, so it doesn't look like he's going to hit something. It just looks like Liam Neeson swung a sword, and then they put on top of it.
It's like the motto was, let's do it in post.
Yes,
basically,
yes.
Which is never, ever a good thing to do unless you're really, really good at what you do. But to that end, I pointed this out, the battle that the droids have with the Gungans looks like the Windows XP desktop background.
Yeah,
I love that
and the
so
lighting
much.
is just very weird, too.
All throughout the prequels,
and
but
like,
especially here, yeah.
The Gungans in that battle, they have like a shield generator and like mobile artillery. But you have to remember, they're an amphibious...
Yeah, where are they getting this?
They live in the water, and their city just got conquered, and they happen to have mobile artillery just sitting there.
Yeah,
it's so dumb.
And then, okay, do we want to get to hot take 2, possibly?
Yes.
Yeah, let's ramp it up, ramp the spicy levels.
This may not be as much. We may be reaching just like a mild spicy, perhaps.
Okay.
Pod racing sucks.
No, I agree with you 100%.
It was too slow.
Thank you.
I did not like that sequence. I've never liked it. I mean, the Lego game supplanted that.
Yeah.
Oh my god. But like it felt like we were like getting a play-by-play of the scene, and it is just and like the music only actually comes later, and it's you're just.
I just thought of the way to describe it, and it has nothing to do with Triscuits. Before you ask,
okay.
The thing that gets me is it feels like, because it's a known thing that like George Lucas loves cars. He's always loved cars, and American Graffiti. American Graffiti is his other greatest movie ever.
I watched that in his class. The Nate. What's
Mr.
his
Matt.
name? Yeah, it was the cinematic studies.
Yes,
but
it feels like George Lucas loved that scene, but it's the equivalent to somebody like who really loves something that you don't care about,
flashing it in front of you,
like ranting it because you're just like, oh look at and this, and he's explaining it through film as to why he loves it, and that's why there's no music. That's why it's just editing shots of just like Anakin, and then he turns, and then you see the car.
Yeah.
I'm sure to George Lucas, that is the most exciting thing. And it's almost charming in the fact that, like, this is how he's trying to explain it to us through the language of film. but it's so boring.
It's boring. The editing also, I was looking really closely. The way the shots are composed is really weird. They're kind of off center a lot of the time, or they're trying to cram so much into such a big, like they zoom in so much, and it's really wild. It's like trying to put a camera on the other side of glass on a car. Like it's not the same effect when it's a CGI pod that you're flying on a desert planet. Like, it's really not the same. And to try to make it that way, you feel that as you're watching it. It just kind of ruins it.
My actual issue with the editing for that is not necessarily composition as much as it is the variety of shots, where it's the same thing for the whole thing, and it's beyond like the breakups where it then cuts to like everybody else reacting to him and like giving their like one or two things. It is the pods. Then we cut to Anakin. Then we cut back to the pods.
Yeah.
Then we cut back to Anakin, and Anakin goes left, and then we see the pod go left, and then we see if they react. If they react, then Anakin goes click, 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 and we watch him go forward. Like that is the entire. And again, I think this is another point where they really screwed Jake Lloyd on this, because Jake Lloyd gets to do no facial acting because he has, and I want to also say, iconic look. I really love the look of Anakin in this scene specifically. I think his helmet and goggles, it is a great look, and I think it's iconic, and I like the idea that it barely fits him because he's not supposed to be in this position, and what happens later, he's not supposed to be in the position of a Jedi, which causes him to do this whole thing, and I get that. It's like a theme for him.
Okay, that's fair.
But it results in him cutting off his eyes, and like we miss a lot of his entire personality.
Just the mouth, pretty much, which he doesn't use. So
he's not able to do a lot of facial acting. And again, like he wasn't amazing, but he did it. Like one of his most iconic moments is when he just like does that weird like side mouth like thing, and he doesn't get to do that. So the scene is super boring. So we have no music. We have just the same shots being repeated, and we don't have facial acting from our main character for the arc, if you want to call it.
Yeah, that I think that is a very, very good analysis. Here's my problem with this scene. Not only from the way the point of the film in which it happens feels really weird, because it's like the middle of the film basically is where it ends, like the halfway point. So we still have all the Coruscant stuff and the final stuff on Naboo to still happen. So it's just like, shouldn't this... It's trying to be the midpoint, but what does that represent for the story that they're winning the pod race? Like, it's an empty success. It's just a success to be a success, to have a happy moment halfway through the movie before we go to the politics stuff.
Yeah, and it really does feel like the movie just like ended and then we're still going.
Yeah.
Like there's a villain, or we need to defeat the villain. We defeated the villain now. Move on.
Yeah.
The way that the scene kind of happens, when I was a kid, I felt like it took forever to get to the pod race. When I just rewatched it, I don't think it took forever to get to the pod race. I actually think there wasn't enough time before we got to the pod race.
There was no build-up to make it feel actually significant.
It happens the next day after they talk about it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, by the way, there happens to be this pod race. I can win a bunch of money and we can all go to Coruscant.
They mention it, we see the pod, we have like a side conversation with Watto about betting, and then we're there. And that's it. And it's like, whoa, hold on, Buckaroo. You're rushing that just a wee little bit. It doesn't feel earned or warranted. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it basically is only there for that empty reward of, we need a way to get off the planet. And you know they're going to get it. You know that they're going to make it to get to Coruscant and then fight Darth Maul and everything. Like, it's obvious it's going to happen. So it feels empty as a result.
While we're on the subject of around this point, look, I don't want to become CinemaSins, because that's the lowest form of anything. But the bet always bothers me.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Why is Qui-Gon bothering with any of this? Because here's the thing. Just take them. Why are we engaging in this?
It's like actually the right thing to do. They're slaves.
Like, you could just literally... They're like, oh no, we can't take Shmi with us because I didn't win her in the bet. Just fuck... He has no money. There's no police here. Like, the Hutts is it, and you're leaving. Yeah. And then on top of that, you have the literal queen of a planet. You could just You could just be like, no, I'm exempting them from this. You have everything to get away with just taking this woman because I don't know, maybe. And this is one of the issues I have with the construction of some of the outside material for Star Wars is that they go, well, what happened in these other movies? Let's give a long, big, sweeping explanation because did you notice they never actually talk about this in the movie, but like the whole Jedi's rule of nope, can't do it. You can't have your parents with you. They never say that. They never have the whole talk about how parents work in it.
That's a good point. But it never establishes that.
That's introduced later. So this film, I still feel confident in saying it's stupid that they don't take Shmi. Because it was this film's idea to basically cause that to be invented.
So it's an internal consistency problem because it's not an established rule. And even if that's the problem, easy fix. Put Shmi on another planet where she'll be able to live a happy life. You can always visit her if it's really that much of a problem.
If you really need to, you could still have some tragic thing happen to her where she dies.
Yeah.
And have the episode 2 moment where Anakin murders people. It doesn't necessarily have to happen on Tatooine.
Or you free her, and then she goes, no, this isn't for me. This is your adventure. Or something like that. You were born for better things. She says something like, my life is here. But that's only after Qui-Gon goes, yep, couldn't win her in a bet. Sorry.
Now, maybe the problem with that would be that it's not the Jedi's fault that she dies. And that's the reason why it is the way that it is. I'm not saying it's good, but that is the reason why George made it that way.
But again, then maybe that they're both free, and she goes, oh, I can come? And they go, no. Because then that's active.
Yes.
That is not...
Fair, yeah.
It is a weird failure on Qui-Gon, but the movie doesn't paint it that way. That is another thing where it's retroactively speaking, you could... Yeah, it's Qui-Gon's fault, but the movie doesn't treat it like it's Qui-Gon's fault.
The whole scene feels really artificial, it's trying to put drama into something that shouldn't have drama. Just to have that, after the happy moment, the, low point for Anakin, that then never gets developed again.
Plus, it's Qui-Gon Jinn. He's, his whole thing is not following the rules. Obi-Wan says, if you just followed the rules, you'd be on the council. He is the one Jedi at this time that would 1,000% do that. Yeah. And that's why his 2 main students go on to be, the wild and crazy dudes that, ride through all of the Clone Wars. And, the fact that he doesn't it always pisses me off because that is such, what are you doing? It doesn't fit
all people.
It doesn't fit his character.
No, it doesn't. It's a huge problem, and I think that hurts the defense that he's supposed to be this figure that would be necessary for Anakin's whole not being Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Because if he isn't being that, then what makes him any different than all the other Jedi? Then we're losing that. The film is then actively telling us not. At that moment, and then in the next scene, it's but you don't follow the council, so it's conflicting with itself, and then you have the exterior lore and the stuff I was talking about earlier saying, yeah, Qui-Gon is the guy that doesn't do what the Jedi say to do, and then it's well, what's going on then? It's at conflict with itself.
The fact that she's not picked up is such, because I said, it's so easy to write around that. And
it wouldn't have
That's
been
my
hard.
problem with things like this, because it is always a matter of effort. How much are you willing to, find a way to make it work? And if you want to do something, there's always a way to do it where other things get balanced out well. But if you only single out one intention, we want to make it so that Anakin's separated from his mother, and you don't consider the effect that has on what the other characters are doing, without acknowledging that, you have problems like this. And that's something the Phantom Menace does a lot, and I think is actually a problem in a lot of Star Wars stuff, as we'll see. But what's your third hot take?
Oh, yeah.
Do we want to get to the third hot take, or do we want to discuss the bantha in the room to add a little bit of Star Wars humor about this movie? Let me ask you, what do you think the elephant or bantha in the room is?
Well, we've talked about Jake Lloyd. We've talked about Jar Jar Binks.
Because there's a giant-ass elephant in this room that we haven't talked about yet.
The Trade Federation stereotypes, perhaps?
The racism.
A little bit of racism. That was...
The fact that the greedy and smart technologically people are clearly supposed to be offensive Asian stereotypes.
Yeah.
Jar Jar. And
don't get me started.
yeah, no,
The
that
Gungans in general. I was like,
literally
Yeah.
all of it.
Made to look stupid and incompetent.
And it's especially weird because George Lucas himself is not like politically that. In fact, like it's so many things. Like it's just the weirdest thing that he wrote this way. And then the one that gets me the most, and I think is most prescient today to acknowledge, the fact that Watto is clearly an anti-Semitic like trope. Like he is literally.
I can kind of see it. Yeah.
Toydarians are just Jewish stereotypes
Fair.
wrapped up into, and every time I watch this, again, I know it was 2000s and everyone was doing it, so it's not easy, but Toydarians are just so, like, literally he goes, like, he's immune to Jedi mind tricks because he's more concerned about money.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's subtext that the movie is full of, and
the fact that it's in a desert area.
Yeah, it's not really beating around the bush with it. It's unfortunate.
Even if it's unintentional, it's like, boy, like you don't want that to be something you unintentionally do.
that might be unintentional.
Yeah.
I get the impression that is just probably something that could be subconsciously buried in somebody's mind when they write a character. The other ones, I think, are a little more on the nose. But that one in particular, like the African American bumbling character is an archetype that's existed in film as long as film has really been a thing. But with something like that, I feel like that is more subtext, if anything. I can see it, and I also can see it. I could dismiss as just being coincidences. But
yeah, it's just an extremely poorly aged aspect of the film that honestly wasn't exactly like well aged when it came out.
Okay, that's fair.
And it's the thing I want to acknowledge. Like, this film has a lot of fundamental problems. This was something that like it is the original sin of this movie, if you ask me. The fact that like one of the first things we hear are the Trade Federation.
Yeah, it's objectively undefendable.
Yeah,
it's
no,
just bad.
Yeah, and that's what before I get to, like, because I wanted to acknowledge it 1,000%, but I didn't want it to be the last thing we talk about, because
that's not something that we should gloss over.
Yeah, and it's also not something we want to end a podcast on. Be like, and then racism is bad. Good night, everybody.
Okay, well,
Please
here's
like,
a good
comment,
transition.
subscribe.
Stuff we liked. Let's transition to stuff that we thought that was good.
Okay.
Because I feel like that's a good
done.
balance. I already mentioned a couple lines that I thought were good. Those were some of my favorites. I also really like one of the characters says to Padme, right as they're about to leave Naboo, like, Senator Palpatine will need your help. And it's like, it's a really nice, detail, like, ooh, that could mean something maybe. Like, that's one of the more subtle ones. Then there's the obvious, like, we will watch your career with great interest. Like, that one's a little more tacky and on the
There's
nose.
fun lines in this.
Yeah, some that
There
actually
are.
make
My
sense.
personal favorite is at the pod race when Qui-Gon's talking to Padme. She's, like, disagreeing with him, and he's like, the Queen trusts my judgment. Handmaiden, you should too. And it's like,
I do kind of like that twist.
that's
in
a
the end.
nice. I don't like the way it was done. I think it's so poorly framed in the scene. It just comes out of nowhere. Like, the double is talking, and then there's no cue for Padme to suddenly reveal herself. She just does without any build up. And then Connor and I were having a problem when we were watching. We couldn't tell which the double or Padme was in the Queen attire at the Senate. Which, if it were Padme, it would be very muddling to her character, because her whole thing is, building a better galaxy. But if she was helping Palpatine get into power, that completely
that would be a
destroys
problem, but
her arc.
Yeah, I think the implication is that the double is acting for Padme, but at the same time,
It's so hard to tell. They speak similar.
Because I would think, like, because they never actually are separate enough that they couldn't communicate, because they're not able to communicate with Coruscant because of just like jamming or whatever, and they're not able to contact Naboo because of distance and whatnot. And so I believe the implication is that the person acting as Padme, not acting as because they don't call it whatever, the acting as the Queen, is basically just enacting Padme's thing, so Padme can go and actually be actively helping the situation.
Perhaps, although to that end I did want to ask, people would know the name of the Queen. So why is the
Yeah, it's
queen
weird.
double
I don't
referring to
understand.
the handmaiden by the name of the
Like,
queen?
how
Wouldn't
can
that
I-
arouse suspicion?
Like at first,
Maybe they just call her Amidala.
Well, like, she has a first name, I'm sure.
like at first that
The
might
film
be
doesn't
the-
use it just to keep that dramatic reveal
Yeah.
for later. That's the only reason they don't say it.
Like it might have been for the benefit. Excuse me, for like the Jedi Qui-Gon, but like in the Senate, like Palpatine knows who Padme is.
Yeah.
Like he's from there, so it just feels really weird. But
That is true.
definitely, like her double would definitely f that up with having Sheev let her be controlled.
That I would
Which, like,
like. If
yeah.
it's really the double,
I
I
think
think,
it
that's a
must
nice
be.
detail.
That
Because
has to be it.
that shows her plan actually helping him more.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that she had a contingency and it was all planned out to keep her safe, but that in turn causes consequences. The thing that I really have a problem with more than anything, with relating to that, connecting to what Palpatine's doing and just the greater story of this film, is it tries to frame it as if Palpatine has meddled the circumstances precisely, so this was the outcome that he desired. They would go to Naboo, they would get Padme, they'd bring her to Tatooine, and then they'd bring her to Coruscant so they could bring back Anakin, which was, I guess, what he was looking for, because that's kind of what his plan is centered around. I can't tell if the film is trying to convince me of that or if that's just subtext, but it's really poorly done if that's what it's trying to do.
I think the movie is... I'm pretty sure that the whole plan, his original plan, I think his checkpoint in this is becoming Supreme Chancellor. And I think honestly, it's almost funny. Again, this may go into just stuff we find out later and whatnot. Again, like it doesn't actively help the film in the moment, but like if you want to sleep at night, I guess. The movie, I think, is implying that his only goal currently was to become Chancellor, and I think his finding event, because he doesn't make Anakin.
No, he doesn't. That theory is wrong. Don't believe it.
Yeah.
That's
It
not
is?
real. It's not. No, he doesn't form Anakin in the womb.
His-
that would really screw up the whole
Yeah.
thing with Palpatine being a surrogate father figure. If he's the actual father figure, that's kind of messed up.
Oh, okay.
And then that
okay.
creates a dilemma with the bloodlines, which would make Rey and Kylo's thing
Okay.
incest. So
Yeah,
we're not
no,
going to go into that.
That's fine. Okay.
But I think just his entire point, he literally says like, like an like what is it, like some surprise but a welcome one.
A surprise to be sure,
Yeah.
but a welcome one.
Yeah, and I think that's his entire thing on Anakin, where he's like, "Oh, this guy's powerful. I got this."
Probably.
And you know his dad is basically dead, so I got this. And then his whole thing is just to become Supreme Chancellor. And again, I think if I just had to map it out, he talks to the Trade Federation. He's like, "Trade Federation, here's some droids. Here's money for droids." And then what you're going to do is you're going to attack Naboo and get them to do this thing so we can invade. And then I'm going to be over here and be like, "I'm from Naboo. You should make me Chancellor because Valorum sucks."
So why does he want her to sign the treaty then? What's the end in him for him?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Because I think what he wants to do, and this is again where it's like, I think this is the background details that I like. He doesn't want to sign a treaty. He knows Amidala will not, so that creates the conflict. He doesn't want her to go there. That's not part of his plan. Because he needs his supporters. He needs this thing to go on, and he needs the conflict on his own planet so that he can get the sympathy vote to be like, Chancellor Valorum is not doing anything because he's controlled by the corrupt people. And then he gets the vote. He becomes Supreme Chancellor. He holds on to those powers long enough so that they can make the clone army, and then he can hold on to his position way longer than he is allowed because he's in war times, and then he can do Order 66 once he has all the chess pieces in place.
I don't think he cares about the outcome of the Naboo situation. All that matters to him is that he gets to be the Supreme Chancellor. The treaty sounds like it's more of the instigator for the whole stir in the Senate about Valorum being weak. The problem is, with that, he states to the Trade Federation in the opening scene of when he's introduced that Valorum sending the two Jedi there was not expected. Which kind of is like, so how much of this is something he predicted then?
Is it possible that he did know and he's lying to them?
He really
I
did
don't-
seem
The conspiracy
that he thought
bit.
that
I don't know.
Padme was a young, incompetent person.
We
that,
should get indication, because we know when Palpatine is surprised by something. We have enough context, like from what he says about Padme. I believe because we see him physically in the scene before being shocked that she's going back. We don't have any context for that in the opening, so I would just believe that it would be the same, because the way he delivers it, you know, it's a very like vicious, like, kill them immediately. Like, this is gonna get in my way if they don't die, so kill them, please. Like, you know, presumably the stir of events that happens, it just feels so random that he would want, if he wanted the Jedi to show up and he wanted them to save Padme and bring her right to Coruscant, the fact that they go to Tatooine and that Maul follows them there too is just even more of a total confusion for logical sense. It's just, there's a lot of that in the movie that I can't stand. The way the plot comes together, it's just like being glued together, and you can rip it apart so easily.
Wasn't this section about things we liked?
It was. So what
I
was
didn't
the-
realize we
what
We
was-
keep moving off of
what
it
was
because
the-
it reminds us of something.
Well, that's how you know the movie's bad. When you can only talk about the good for so long.
Here's the things I like. It sucked.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here is something I did like. The laser gate scene in Duel of the Fates specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Not Duel of the Fates. I think Duel of the Fates is very overrated. The music. If you remove the music from that scene, I think it's just impressive choreography.
Yeah.
with
The
very
fight-
bad lighting.
the lighting is absolute dog shit.
Actually
it is terrible.
atrocious.
But the fight itself has no meaning, because Maul is literally just a placeholder for the Sith, and the Jedi that are fighting him are just the Jedi. So it just feels like a conflict of ideology that doesn't have any relevance to the characters in the fight. You know?
Hey, Mythical, I'm just going to let you know now. We've now hit my third hottest take.
Oh boy.
Darth Maul does not work in this film in the slightest.
No, he doesn't. He does not work, because
And I think it extends to his fight scene.
Like,
that's fair.
I'd argue that he's cool, but he has like 21 words that he
He is
says.
the classic example of character that looks cool to
Yeah.
sell toys, that ropes people
like that,
in.
That's not a
and
good
that's
thing.
it.
Yeah.
No, yeah. It's a compliment to the people who did his
Who designed
design.
him.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, that's all
it.
that.
And I love
double-edged lightsaber,
I love
like-
complimenting those people, because at the end of the day, Star Wars is a showcase for a lot of fashion designers, for a lot of artists who work professionally at that sort of thing. And I don't think Darth Maul is one of the better designs. I think it's a cool design.
I think he's one of the better designs.
But
Yeah,
he's definitely, you know, I like the way he looks better in like the Clone Wars with the robotic legs and everything.
He is
even though that's a really weird thing that happens that should not have happened, but whatever.
He's just the Boba Fett of this trilogy.
Oh my god.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is weird, because this trilogy has Boba Fett.
It does.
Yeah.
And then we never saw him again. He never got a spin-off show.
Never.
Nope.
And
never
then there's
happened.
the American Graffiti stuff in the show that never happened. That was kind of funny.
But back to the point about Maul. Maul, to me, just, like, he's nothing. He's not like a...
He isn't
Here's the thing. What he should have been to me is a looming threat for the whole entire movie. And it's weird that they set him up as, like, especially in the Clone Wars, where they're like, oh, he is Obi-Wan's main dude, and like he fought him once. He killed his master. I don't understand why. Because here's the thing, like, he has no character in this movie. It's not even, and they don't even use the base of that character in, like, the Clone Wars.
They use the premise that he was defeated by Obi-Wan, so he's driven by revenge.
And that's
think-
when he becomes an amazing character.
I think that is a strong premise, but that is the only thing that the Phantom Menace lends to that arc, is literally just what happened. Not any reading into it, not any development with the characters, no themes, nothing. It's just they fought, he died, he killed Qui-Gon, there's a mutual grudge, but Obi-Wan put it past him because he thought he killed him.
Yeah.
And then that in and of itself leads to a whole slew of problems with the two of them later on that does get resolved nicely. But I will always have a problem with the fact Maul survived, because anytime a character survives something like that, it's a little... It's just crossing the line, I think.
Well, go ahead, Connor.
Okay, and again, more extended material that lends to the context.
Mm-hmm.
The first Star Wars book I read was the Darth Maul book in 4th grade. From like it was like from the book sale thing, and like they like his entire backstory is that like it was like very rough. He lived on Mustafar, and like Palpatine ended up like training him and then abandoned him essentially, and that it took all of, like the Clone Wars and like all of this extended material to actually flesh out a character that does nothing in the movie.
He has nothing.
There's so many villains in the Phantom Menace, and there's not enough time to actually develop any of them properly. Like, we've got the one in the pod racing scene. He's like, he's like guy with 4 arms. He's all mean.
Yeah.
Got Watto, who's kind of like a
antagonistic.
Not completely villain, but like antagonistic.
It's more of just a threat.
He impedes their forward motion.
We've got the incompetent Trade Federation, who are all like they want money and to make people submit. And we've got like Palpatine controlling it all, but like there's never actually any time to develop it. Like Palpatine to a degree, and like he is the main villain, so it makes sense that he'd get most of that time. But there's just so many different stories trying to compete for each other that none of them actually get to develop.
Here's my thing, and this I might consider a hot take in its own right. A book like that or Clone Wars does not make Maul better in this movie.
Yeah. Well, again,
not even because it's after. The fact that it's something different. This movie should stand on its own.
It highlights the failure of that.
Yeah.
It's what we were saying before, where it's like outside material is great, but it doesn't actually...
It should add to it. It shouldn't justify it.
I have the same argument for Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. I think Clone Wars makes Revenge of the Sith better, but it does. But in the space of the two of them together, when I watch Revenge of the Sith, I don't often think about Clone Wars because it's not. I mean, they visually look different. There's a lot of changes aesthetically, but even just the fact that's not what the movie is. The movie is Revenge of the Sith. It didn't have that context. When you watch Clone Wars, I think thinking of Revenge of the Sith makes Clone Wars more interesting, but Clone Wars cannot logically make Revenge of the Sith better because Revenge of the Sith has problems that Revenge of the Sith has that you can't fix unless you were to fix Revenge of the Sith. I
also think the thing people always seem to gloss over or maybe forget about the final scene, quote unquote, of the fight. It's not one scene. Do you remember how it's edited?
Are you talking about all the different plot lines
ending around the same? When you watch any time anybody's like the Darth Maul fight from episode 1, here's the YouTube, it's always just
the Darth Maul fight.
But they edit in a bunch of other crap I don't care about. And like it's like I get it. It's supposed to be like all these climactic things happening at once, but like it just, I always forget that where it's just like, because the most iconic moment is like when you just ignore, when you edit out every other thing.
Okay. I'm gonna say something I never would have thought I'd said. The Last Jedi did it better.
I would have said that 1,000 times because The Last Jedi does most things better.
Not much. It does. I will get to that. But here's my thing.
99.9% of things.
The climax of the climactic point, I will say, of The Last Jedi, that is framed as the climactic point, is the Holdo space ram maneuver. And the fact that they intersect the 3 plot lines together with the editing, and so that there's like 3 splits that happen, and then the actual ram. Like, that's really great visual storytelling. This movie doesn't do that. It says, let's end the one on the battlefield. Let's end the one in space. Let's end the one in the throne room chamber with the speech, the treaty. And then let's end the one with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan. It's just like end. It's not all the ends coming together all at once. They're the heat of the climax just being one contained unit. It's like 4 different occurrences. I don't have a problem with the final battle being in 4 different places. It's just the way that it is structured and how it all comes together in the end is just, it doesn't really work that way.
There are so many people that always tell me, that last scene, it really saves I unplugged myself, but I'm still talking into the mic, and that's all that matters.
That is all that matters.
There are a lot of people that tell me, once you just, once you get to that scene, it really saves the movie. I don't think it does. No. And I think if we're, how long have we been going?
An hour and a half.
Really?
2 hours is probably okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just.
No, there's no limit to this conversation.
If I just had to summarize the problem, is just a lot of the good stuff doesn't really justify the bad stuff that I dislike.
Their argument is basically we're at the 2 hour and 10 minute mark of the movie. So this one good scene is going to make the last 2 hours of dog shit suddenly really
how
good.
it works.
No. Unless you are nuancing what that all means with like recontextualization, which this film doesn't have the intelligence to do. That's not something that this
That
does.
would take intelligent directing.
That's something that like Citizen Kane will do with showing the sled at the end that has. I'm about to spoil a movie.
Yes, don't spoil the movie.
80 years ago. Spoiler alert, or should I not say it?
No, because people have not seen Citizen Kane, and they should for that
Watch
payoff.
Citizen Kane. It's very good. I mean, there's a reason it's called one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah.
Like, that is an example of that extra context completely redoes the entire movie.
That's it done well.
Do we really feel it's fair, though, to compare this movie
to
Citizen fucking Kane?
I was using that as a, like, this is what that would look like ideally. A recontextualization with an end scene that is good. Not that the rest of the movie's bad, but in this case, there is nothing that is recontextualized from the movie. The reveal that Palpatine is Darth Sidious is not something that is revealed in the end of the movie. That has very clearly been laid out throughout the movie. Any attentive viewer picks up on that, you know?
He's also, like, revealed off the bat that, like, oh, yeah, Palpatine's behind it. Oh boy, there's no lead up.
It was revealed if you like searched it up because it's Ian McDermott. It's just the guy who played him previously.
If you know your actors, it's over. Here's a funny detail though: Darth Plagueis is still alive during the duration of this movie.
Yeah,
I never knew that, but it's really interesting when you think about the fact that Palpatine is still technically a Sith apprentice at this point.
Wait, so in the third movie, he then goes on to say, oh, this isn't a story of the Jedi. This thing that happened, like, in the our equivalent to the, like, 2010s, that's not a story that the Jedi would tell. He died. He died 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's no way that's just the line being stupid.
That would be like, listen. You probably didn't know about this, but, this guy Harambe, it's not a story that they would tell you these days. Kid fell into, and like it's just
oh my god,
what are you talking about? It happened like a decade ago. I'm Anakin and I'm like 20 something.
Now
I know
again,
this.
It is the Sith that is happening, but then the answer is, how would the Jedi even know about it? Like, they wouldn't know about it. That's something that happened with the Sith. They keep themselves pretty secret. There's no way the Jedi would know about that.
No, the Jedi would not tell you about it. They don't know.
That's nonsense to even suggest that they could. That's just Revenge of the Sith trying to frame the line to lure in Anakin more than it is anything else.
To me, it sounds more like they wrote that, and they wrote like episode 3, and then they went, "Oh, wait, what did we say?" Oh, well, our line's better anyway.
Yeah, probably.
It's one of the better parts of episode 3.
Of that scene, rather. That movie.
It's a good scene without the glaring inconsistencies.
I'm looking forward to just like talking about like those things, because I'm trying to piece in my mind, because I'm like, this is, and I think it is a pretty easy thing to say, at least for me, is that this is the worst mainline Star Wars movie. No, so
I would need to watch everything again, because I looked at this movie with different eyes when I rewatched it this time, and I'm going to give every movie that standard of treatment where I say, this is what it is doing, does it work? Yes or no? I don't even care about how I feel.
Rise of Skywalker is going to be interesting.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing with how I deal with movies. I'm a connoisseur of bad movies, but I still like good movies, obviously. And so there's this guy, Jello Apocalypse. He has an interesting way of the way he frames it is it's more like a swing. So when the worse a movie gets, is like, oh, it goes down in this rating, down in this rating, down in this rating, but then we get to like the bell curve. Like a Perfect Zero is just a boring nothing film, and then that's when we start swinging up to the bad it's good.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that's kind of where like I hit with a lot of movies, where I kind of use it almost a pendulum, and also like a tier system almost. It's it's a human thought. It's complex, but it's when a movie I have to be like, okay, let's say let's see if it's like this. How is it presenting itself? If it's like, trying to be like a higher up here thing, then I gotta go, okay, well, I gotta judge as a higher up here thing. Does it fit this? Yes or no? And like so many of that criteria. But like if a movie's not attempting to present itself that way, I don't think it's very fair to present it as higher, and that's why it's so many of the things. That's why, like, although I think you can have criticisms of something like a Marvel movie, I think when people could then go like, oh, it's not real art, and like that's when you're putting it up here as opposed to like the downer notch that it's intending to be. That doesn't mean it's immune to criticism. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't value the stuff above it, but that just means it's not trying to be higher than that. So as we move down from that tier, at least this is in my mind, we go from, okay, so we have this, let's judge it on this. Did it fail or succeed at this? That's when we move it down the tier, and we keep going on that step ladder almost of just what is it attempting to do, and what is it able to do? What should it be doing? And that's where I will, bam, in my mind, like, this is where I will start to judge this movie from. I think this movie is trying to be something, but it's also been tempting to be that big Hollywood popcorn, yay, fun movie.
It doesn't even really feel like that, though. It just feels like nothing.
But again, like, its status is as that big budget popcorn movie. And guess what? Sometimes those popcorn movies can be so good, and that's the advantage of the tier system for me, where then it moves into the upper tier. When something is that good, it can move up in tier. This movie, it doesn't go up there. I think it fails by its own standards that I'm giving it. And if I have to start to judge it as just a popcorn feature, I think it's a pretty bad popcorn feature. And that's why looking forward in the rest of them, I think the rest of them are just better popcorn movies. If I just be like thematically and whatnot, because at the end of the day, as much as I love Star Wars, as much as we all love Star Wars, I think like it is part of this big engine for making money. That's just why they're currently made. That's why they were allowed to be made.
Unfortunately, ever since A New Hope, or maybe Empire, maybe that was the point where there was that shit. Because like Return of the Jedi,
Christmas special.
Oh god,
that's when it started to become a money game.
Empire, I would argue there was artistic merit as a priority, but Return of the Jedi, I think it's indisputable. The change from Wookiees to Ewoks is a Paramount one, where it was like toy sales.
No, it was from Fox, decisions. Not Paramount.
Oh my god.
Rick, Mythical, can you edit like dead silence for like 15 seconds in there?
Why don't we just make the dead silence?
Right. Paramount, it was from Fox.
Have you seen the Halo TV show? It's really bad, and it's from Paramount.
No, I only watch good things. I own Morbius on Blu-ray.
Classic cinema.
And cats.
Morbius is the Citizen Kane of superhero movies. Let me tell you, it has acting. It's got a budget. It has effects, but most importantly, it has a post-credit scene and an ending.
Yeah.
During Thanksgiving dinner, my uncle unironically said he enjoyed Morbius.
Oh my god.
And me and my brother unironically laughed at his face during Thanksgiving dinner.
Good for you. You did the right thing.
Yeah.
Getting back to Star Wars.
Yeah, I think that this movie, I see the way you look at it. I think Phantom Menace it's trying to be the foundation. It's trying to make some intellectual points, but it is so bogged down in this sort of mundane atmosphere about itself. I don't even know what is the cause of it. It just feels so like void of any life, any emotion that like at least most popcorn movies try to have. There's character to some of the people. There's an attempt to create high stakes action scenes. There's an attempt to have any kind of emotion, and this movie just feels like it wasn't doing that at all, and I don't really know what the motive for that could have possibly been. Like Attack of the Clones, I feel some things while I watch, because at least it feels like there is emotion there are performances given, but this is just I don't get that. And that is one thing I will give to the sequel trilogy, that I think there are good performances. I don't know if I'd say the best performances in Star Wars, but I think the performance Mark Hamill gives is very good. I think Adam Driver's performance is very good. I don't think his character is very good, but his performance is very, very good. He does the whole back and forth thing so well. His face can say a million things in an instant that a piece of dialogue could never convey. And to me, that is like the pinnacle of acting. He's just, one of the best in our generation. But the Phantom Menace doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It really does fail in both those quantities.
Yeah. So when a movie doesn't have any artistic merit and it has no good writing, and when you analyze it, it has no merit, and it's just not even enjoyable, it kind of makes you think, I guess, like what.
Yeah. It's just to say like no artistic merit, like I don't know how much we want to get into like the philosophical musings of like how we define art and succeeding at art.
I don't want to get into that.
What I would say is, if I just think like what did they try to accomplish, and I don't think they really accomplished it, and then I go, okay, great, because I didn't take away what they took away when making it, and then I look at it as, because nobody goes into these things going, I'm going to make one of the worst movies ever made, and then they did. This wouldn't even crack my bottom 10, but this is the worst movie I watch constantly, is what I would say.
Yeah, because it's Star Wars.
I mean, aside from Cats, which I've seen which I think I have 7 times. You notice how it keeps getting higher every time I mention it? It's because I keep rewatching it. I have it on YouTube, so like I can just keep. But
we might have to actually talk about that because I've never seen it.
I need to see it.
Yeah, we'll talk about Velma because I just finished.
No!
I just finished the last 2 episodes today. No, that's where I'd say just like every other. You can have problems with the other movies. Absolutely. Can you have problems with The Last Jedi? I don't understand why you would. It's the best one, but then like, I'm stirring the pot, but I do genuinely believe it.
You're gonna make a lot of people listening very angry.
No, I can make a lot of Star Wars fans very angry. You want to see me make a lot of Star Wars fans angry?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay, ready? Women are people too.
That makes Star Wars fans angry. That's disappointing.
Yeah. Oh my God. No. Hey, you want to hear another way to make Star Wars fans angry? Gay people exist.
Okay, well that's just people watching the movie.
You need
that's
to
not
watch
even
Andor.
fans at that point.
Please watch Andor.
Yeah.
Please watch Andor.
All these things you're saying are treated with such nuance in Andor.
Yeah.
You have to watch it.
I cannot wait.
I know, because I need to watch Velma.
Oh my God.
I don't have time to watch Andor. I have to watch Velma.
Stop doing this to yourself.
I'm not saying I started the first episode again, but
oh God, William. One thing I wanted to add, though, you mentioned with the artistic merit thing, you can't necessarily stop at whether the filmmaker did what they wanted to do. You then have to ask, is what they did
that's
good?
fair. Yeah,
that's my problem with a lot of what Disney's made, and also what I think the Phantom Menace. I mean, the Phantom Menace, I don't think even succeeded at what George was trying to do. But if it did, I would still ask, does what he did make sense? Does it all come together at the end? Is there a conclusion? Does it tell a story? Does it make me reevaluate the way that I see the world? And I can't say that it does, and I can't say a couple of the Star Wars movies really don't do that for me either, unfortunately. And I wish that they did, because that's the point of movies, is to experience a story, and in this case, you're in a fantasy sci-fi world to feel immersed.
Not that I'm saying that like a film shouldn't aim to like change how you think about the world, but like at some point I do question, is that their intention to make you re-question the world? I don't know if it always is.
It doesn't always have to be. I didn't mean to say that that's like the primary objective, but I think when it does, that's a huge plus. Andor does that. That's why I'm using that as a standard, because I feel like that's a high bar that Star Wars for me now has to surpass, and I don't have faith that a lot of it can.
God, I really shouldn't watch Andor. It might ruin things for me.
Actually.
But honestly, like that is the way that I see it. Like if you can't do that, fine. At least show me a story that has heart to it, but that also really, it at least like has a theme, and it tells me something about that message in a profound way. It doesn't have to make me question my view of the world or look at situations with more nuance, but at least makes me think like, oh yeah, this is an interesting idea. I never, it's kind of neat that's there, and they did this thing and that thing with it in the movie.
Yeah, it fails to make you think. There's not like a big change in the movie that you ever really get to see. Like like what actually does this bring to the wider canon? Like I guess we have the introduction of Luke. He doesn't really change as a character in this.
Wait,
like
Luke or Anakin?
Anakin.
I was gonna say.
Luke sucked in this movie.
Luke did suck in this movie. Just
didn't even do shit.
Just unfertilized egg. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? He existed the moment Padme laid eyes on Anakin.
Oh,
okay?
we gotta stop that.
I
He's a child and so is she.
I hate that. I have
my
heard
God.
people say that like there's a bud of romance in this movie. What Anakin
not.
does for Padme is purely a gesture of friendship, making her the Japar snippet that she has later on. Like that is purely just a kindred act of childlike love.
The fact that you know what the like specific details of what it's called though is honestly like both like wow and wow.
Well, the reason I do is probably because I used to watch a lot of lore videos before I said I don't like these anymore, because it got to the point where it was defending bad writing. Because that's what a lot of them do, is they're like, oh, why did so-and-so do this to so-and-so? I'm trying to think of an example.
If you have to come up with a contrived reason for why something happened, like that reason wasn't displayed correctly.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
that's
Phantom
not,
Menace.
That's not
you
good
just
writing.
summed up the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
It's not good writing.
Or like, did Palpatine drain Padme's life essence to save Anakin? Stuff like that. Like,
Or
what?
was the
my
movie
God.
poorly written?
What? That's just a plot hole. That's not anything relating to, not even a plot hole. It's just
bad writing.
it's incongruent events that are happening at the same time that people
Plot
connect because they're
incongruence,
edited
yeah.
the same way. Like, what the heck?
What? And the reason, if we like, I don't know if when we want to start wrapping up, but I feel like we are getting to like a bit of a natural conclusion with this.
We're
Yeah.
reaching one.
Yeah,
Let it happen.
Yeah, I've said everything on my notes, which is I know you have a novel in front of you to get to, but yeah, I do have to sleep at some point. It is 9:15.
Sleep.
This is early for me. This is
Yeah.
where the night
I
begins.
wouldn't
Oh,
be
cool,
sleeping.
cool, awesome.
I'm
glad
not
that
proud of that fact, but it's true.
some of us have jobs. Not me, but
And-
some of us may.
Some of us don't have responsibility for their health.
Some of us stream on Twitch that everybody should go follow.
Oh,
Yeah. But
drop a link if you're going to. Get it over with. Come on.
all right, William has given up on Twitch. But anyway, just if I had to just like again get to like my main point is if a movie is not going to accomplish those more lofty goals that it may have, or just a lofty goal that a film can have, then I feel fine in judging it as pure entertainment fodder that I will not like consider like, because there are things that are entertaining that I would say are pretty like brainless and not like great at the actual thing, but I can still be entertained by them. And what I think is this, because that's the two-tier system. In many of the classes that I have here, in just like talking about plays, but it extends to most things, one of the first jobs you have to do to have anybody's attention and have them listen to you in any like entertainment medium is to entertain. And if a film can like accomplish it intellectually, that's a way to entertain. If a film can just be, pure popcorn action schlock, it can still be well crafted and well made and made with love, even if there's not a ton going on.
Sure.
Like mentally under the hood. It really feels like this film fails on both of those accounts. I don't think it really satisfied fans at the time. I don't think it really satisfies fans on its own now.
Yeah, no.
And
on its own.
I think that is why it's such an iconic failure in that sense, because I don't think it's lovingly crafted. I won't deny that. Somebody loved this movie, and I think it's evident in a lot of the film language.
There is a lot of heart here. I can feel it. It just is being bogged down by itself.
And I and to bring it back to something you said, like he's George Lucas is really good at the highfalutin stuff. He's not great at the basics, and I think that's what makes this, as I said, like such an iconic failure.
Yeah. Because, I mean, at least Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, even if they botch the basics, there's a lot of material there to enjoy. There's the memes that so many people countlessly make. There's just the awkward irony of a lot of the Anakin and Padme scenes. There's Anakin and Obi-Wan bantering with each other in the opening scenes of Revenge of the Sith. That there's the campiness of it. Like, there's material there that can be enjoyed. I personally don't find a lot of it that entertaining as much as I used to, but it's still there to enjoy that. I wouldn't consider any of it necessarily great, but that is material that keeps a viewer hooked into the film. This kind of just feels like you're watching it because you're trying to just like learn what George Lucas wanted to do, but you're not really getting anything out of it, though. It doesn't even feel intellectual because of that.
And again, like, it really is a prequel in every sense of the word. And, like, also, like, without all of this context, it's just not, it doesn't feel important. It doesn't feel like it matters, which for, like, a starting point in a story like Star Wars, that's such a huge crime to me.
Yeah. If it had any kind of, like... So, to go up to what you were saying about the types of merit of fiction, the way that I see it, if a film is a successful popcorn thriller, that means that even though it might not be, like, objectively well written, there was writing put into the aspects of it to make it entertaining. Someone had to design the concept of a scene where, say, it's like Fast and Furious or something. It's like, we have a car chase, we had to write what would be happening. There was thought put into that. Maybe not fully through, but there's effort there. Here, I think there was effort, but some of it works and some of it doesn't, and the parts that don't work are so aggressive, and the parts that do are so minute that when they happen, you blink and you miss them. And I had to really pay attention to notice a lot of them, and a lot of the ones that people think are good, like the Duel of the Fates, is just superficial stuff the film is throwing your way. It's dangling a carrot in front of you and saying, hey, come reach up and grab it. You know, look, it's the Duel of the Fates, the lightsaber choreography, flashy visuals, the music, it's supposed to be good, but it's really nothing to it. You know, it's a shame. I wish that this movie was better and that it lived up to my childhood expectations, but it does not.
If I had to summarize it in just like one word, like Trisket, honestly.
Oh my god.
Full circle.
There you go. Well, that's how we opened our Andor segment. How would you summarize your Andor experience? And we both had like really, he quoted Chernobyl, I quoted Andor, which is a bit maybe self-indulgent, but
it's just a little bit, but it's okay because it was a good show, unlike a movie that
this
we were
is
talking
us
about.
telling you to watch Andor, which you're going to have to do by the looks of it anyway.
I don't have a Disney Plus account.
Oh, well...
There's other ways to view media online.
You realize you walked in here as I was rewatching parts of Phantom Menace on my phone.
Yeah, right? I know you have Disney, so shut up.
No, but like I think it's weird. Like my I think like it's glitched. Like every time I turn it on, I go like, oh, Andor, and then it just starts a Bluey episode. So I don't like. That's weird. I'm just gonna when I'm forced to talk about Andor, I'm gonna just walk in and be like, yeah, no, I really like Andor. It's just a weird decision they made to like make it about a small blue cartoon dog. I don't know what this has to do with Star Wars, but it's entertaining.
Judging by the way that you look at things, I think you'll enjoy it, but I don't know. We'll see. I have to see.
I like good things as well as watching Cats.
Oh, no, I don't mean that standard. I mean your standard of thematic development.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be your thing. My thing with themes is theme for me never takes precedence over writing. Ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Because theme is indulgent to writing. It is a result of writing. So if you want to write, like, say, something relating to a character's resurrection and their return, like, the writing has to reflect how they died. And rebuilding themselves, sort of thing. Like, you can't just say they're going to resurrect because they want to resurrect now and then call it theme. Like, for me, the writing, this movie, I don't even know what the themes are, to be quite honest with you. Coming of age, maybe, but there's no
it's just
real
all over
development.
the place.
Yeah. So
what you're saying sounds like a pyramid.
Yeah.
And how you base it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that, like, you have like that underlying basis of
because you
writing
think
is
about it, the
important.
process for film development or any story development is always, it starts with writing. You start with laying out a treatment, a rough outline of where things are going to go, then you write a script, you revise the script, and then it keeps going up, and then eventually you've got the actual filming, the visual production, and you release it. But if your foundation sucks, then it doesn't matter how good it looks. It's built on sand. It's just going to sink and collapse, you know?
Yeah, but theme's the breaks, you know?
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm so goddamn tired.
I was kind of expecting a Trisket joke, but
I was too. That just kind of was a little underwhelming. I'm not gonna lie.
You know what else is underwhelming? A Trisket. I could have said the Phantom Menace. I think I apparently have a real stick up my ass about Triscuits.
oh my god.
Yeah, it's gonna be a reoccurring theme throughout our
Up top.
podcast.
Love theming.
Okay. Well, I don't know if there's anything I really have left to say that hasn't already been said. I mean, it's just dumb.
Yeah.
You know, contrivance, coincidence, sad, bad. No. But
Why don't you know? Are we saying we're wrapping up then?
I think that's
Yeah.
I think that's the natural point of progression.
There's a joke coming.
What? No, I don't want to do a joke. Why don't we just finish this episode? We'll cut it off right after this. When we, at the count of 3, all say the iconic thing that we're going to say at the end of every episode now at the same time. All right.
You're just gonna say Trisket again.
No, on the count of 3, on the count of 3, all 3 of us at the same time are going to say a sign off that we'll stick with for the rest of the entire time. Okay?
Simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
Oh.
All right.
Is it all the same?
Yeah, no,
It's not.
because it's iconic to the thing that we do. So obviously we all go at the same time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Star Wars exists. Goodbye.
I said evaporated sandwiches, and I'm proud of it. I thought you meant just whatever the fuck you wanted to say. You had a whole thing planned. Okay.
You further confused me with every sentence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I was trying to give us a good ending.
Yeah, you tried.
That was
You
that was
tried.
an attempt. There was a try, but it was not a do.
The Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace. It's about a menace that's
was
a
menacing.
phantom.
Yeah.
It was very menacing because it was
It's a
fantastic.
menacing watch.
So I guess that's about it.
Yeah.
So this has been a wrap on our Phantom Menace coverage. Expect to hear us talk about Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith,
And like a lot more Star
Yeah.
Wars.
as much of it
More
as we
Star
can
Wars than
feasibly
any
cover.
one person should watch.
All of the
although
shows,
We've already watched them.
We're
before.
gonna
The
have to
Mandalorian,
talk
Book of
about
Boba Fett,
how that's
Ahsoka when
gonna
it comes out,
all
and that's
gonna
about
come
it.
together.
By the time Ahsoka comes out, I don't know if we'll even be there. It depends how
No,
how
we
deep
won't.
we're going.
I was just
Well-
hoping you'd pick up on the fact that I skipped Andor.
We also skipped the sequels, so.
No, I was talking about TV shows.
Just-
Oh,
on you.
Well, you didn't say
Rebels?
the old Clone Wars show. Or
You should
Rebels.
watch, Tales
or
of the
Resistance. Or Resistance. Or Tales of the Jedi.
Resistance. I have not watched Resistance.
I haven't.
I don't think anybody has.
That's a good point.
Nobody has, but it should be kept that way. So anyway, this is a wrap on our coverage. If you enjoyed, please, I beg you, and maybe subscribe.
That's all, folks.
We're at that point of desperation. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Ciao. Bye.
Remember Star Wars.
Yeah. Whoa.
Star Wars.
Yeah.